Hello everybody, welcome to another SevOne training video. In this training video, I'll be walking you through how to create a custom calculation inside your SevOne NMS. So a custom calculation is an object indicator set that can be used to perform various acts in the SevOne system. This typically tends to be used for things like combining bandwidth indicators or storage indicators. It can really be used for anything at all. So the idea behind a custom calculation is that you can combine lots of different indicators or objects from different devices into one object or one indicator. It just gives you the freedom to create indicators or objects any way you see fit, and it also helps you combine more objects and indicators on more graphs by combining them into one as a whole. But before we go ahead and create a custom calculation, it's important that you understand the difference between an object type, an indicator type, and an indicator, because those are the four pieces we will be using to create a custom calculation. So an object type is something like a hard disk or a memory or CPU, or more or less it's a component of a device that SevOne will be monitoring. Whereas an object is a specific object type for a specific instance. So for instance, the first hard drive in an array would be an object because it uses the object type hard drive and it's select to a device, which would be the first device in the array. Indicator and indicator types are roughly the same way. So an indicator type is a metric that is being collected about an object type. So an indicator type would be something like, if the object type was interface, the indicator type might be out octets. Whereas an indicator, just like an object, is a specific indicator type. So for instance, an indicator would be out octets on Ethernet port 12. So now that we've cleared that up, we're going to go ahead and create our custom calculation now. To do that, we're going to start by creating our object type. So to create an object type, we're going to go up into Administration, down to Monitoring Configuration, and Object Types. Now inside the Object Type Manager, we're going to go up to Filter and select Calculation Polar. So in our Calculation Polar, this is where we're going to actually create our object types. All custom calculation object types will be classified under the Calculation Polar because we are making them manually. To do so, we're just going to go ahead and click Add, and we're going to give it a name. In my case, I'm going to create a custom calculation that revolves around SNMP availability. You can obviously make this for anything you want, but as a training tool, that's a good place to start. So we're going to call this SNMP avail. Save as new. So you'll see that the SNMP avail object type comes under all object types. Now that we've created that object type, what we need to do is we need to go ahead and add an indicator type to match the object type. So we're going to open indicator types here. Click Add. It's going to ask you to name your indicator type. So in our case, we're going to do total SNMP availability. So what we're going to do is we're just going to name this total SNMP avail. And you can give it a description of anything you want. I'm going to call it test for training purposes. For indicator type, it'll always be gauge because we are gauging a metric. And for measured as, there is quite a long list of things that you can select out of the measured as section. Depending on what you're measuring is more or less what you're going to choose. If you're measuring a temperature or a distance or volts, for instance, you would select that metric. But more times than not, it will be either a number or a percent. In our case, we're going to go ahead and select number, and we're going to double check that by going back and checking the specific SNMP polar. But I'm going to select number just for start and click Save as New. Make sure you keep the default allowed for new devices checked. That means every new device that is added to the SevOne NMS will automatically be given this indicator type, instead of having to rediscover the device to make sure it's added. So now we've gone ahead and created this indicator type. We're going to go ahead and double check and make sure that SNMP availability comes in as a number. So to do so, we're going to go into our filter tool, down to SNMP, and then we're going to look for availability. SNMP availability. And you will see that SNMP availability is measured as a number. So by doing so, by double checking, we just made sure that we have classified it correctly. If we had classified it incorrectly, all we have to do is go back up to our filter tool, calculations, select it, and then click the wrench icon on the right hand side, and you'd very easily be able to change it as if we started new. So now that we've created our object type and our indicator types, we're going to go ahead and create our objects and indicators. To do that, we're going to go up into Administration, down to Monitoring Configuration, and into Calculation Editor. From here, we're going to go ahead and create our actual object. To do so, we go up under the object browser and click Add Object. From here, we're going to have to select some certain information. So for parent device, what we're doing is we're actually selecting where we're going to save this object. By selecting a parent device, that doesn't mean that that is the only device that can use the object type. What this means is that is where the object will be located. So if we have to look for it in the future, it'll be attached to that device. Now, just to clarify, just because you make the parent device where it's located doesn't mean it's the only device that can use it. So what I'll do is I'll just select a device. I'll select the first SevNet. And then for object type, we are going to want to go ahead and select the object type we just created. For object name, we're just going to call it total SNMP av. And then an object description, you can just call whatever you like. Now for default value, this is the value we are going to assign to this specific object if it is not receiving any data or if it is not reaching that device. So by default, typically if we are not receiving any data from a device, it'll kick back 0. But there are other instances where you would want a default value of a different number. More time than not, 0 is the correct choice. So let's go ahead and select 0. You'll see that our new object is underneath our device here. And what we've done is we've gone ahead and created the object. But what we need to do is we need to assign the devices for which we will be pulling these indicator and object types from. So as I've mentioned, a custom calculation allows you to pull lots of different objects and indicators off lots of different devices. So the idea is that we're going to want to go ahead and add those devices for which we want to pull this off of to our new object. So to do so, we're going to go up into Add Variable. Just for sake of argument, I'm going to call this 1 because I will be adding 3 devices for our object type. You're obviously going to want to name this variable for exactly whatever it is or whatever it does. For plugin, we're going to go ahead into SNMP and then select the device for which we want to pull it off of. And then I'm going to select SNMP availability because that is what we're measuring. And for indicator availability, go ahead and unselect default value of null and put back in 0 as if we did for creating the object itself and click Save. Now, I will go ahead and do this 3 times because I want 3 devices in our custom calculation. Keep in mind, it doesn't all have to be the exact same object type as long as they are compatible in nature. So if you were doing, for instance, HC octets and regular octets, you can combine them in the same object type. And even if they are not of the same type of caliber, maybe you want availability and octets, as long as they are reported in the same way, number, percent, degree, whatever it is, you can put them together in this specific metric. But it's important that they're pulled the same way. I will add our 3rd device. So now that we've added those 3 devices to our new object, now I need to create an expression to show how this object is going to act with these devices. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and edit this indicator by going over to the wrench icon on the right-hand side. And you'll see that our 3 devices that we added to this object are on the right-hand side. And we have an indicator expression and a maximum value expression. So in our case, what we want to do is we want the total availability. We want to know the total availability off those 3 devices. So it's as simple as just taking the device and dragging it into the SevOne NMS. And since I want to add them together, I will put a plus sign in between each one of these devices. And there we go. I've created our expression. We'll be adding together those 3 devices, SNMP availability, in our new custom calculation. For our maximum value expression, if there is a number at which this should max out at, if you're doing a custom calculation that involves percentage, your max value would be 100%. You cannot score above 100%. So it just helps you to decide what the max value would be. Just like with the indicator, especially at the top, this is also drag and drop. You can make it some complex equation if that's what you need. But in our case, since there is no max value, that the availability will be whatever the addition of those three devices are, we'll leave it blank. So now that we've gone ahead and created both our objects, our indicators, our object types, and our indicator types, we need to go ahead and rediscover the device for which we've located our object on. If we don't rediscover that device now, the object hasn't fully been functional. It hasn't fully been turned on. So to do so, we're going to go up into our device manager, select our device here on the left-hand side, Discovery, and click Discover. So what's going to happen is we're going to go ahead and rediscover this device. And then after the rediscovery, that new object that we created, SNMP availability, will be added to that device. We can go ahead and use the specific object that we just created in our SevOne NMS once this device has been rediscovered. Now that our device has been rediscovered, what we're going to do, just to show that the custom calculation has been added correctly, is we're going to go up in a report and run an instant graph. So I'm going to go ahead and select our device. Into our object, if you go all the way down, you'll see our calculation polar, total SNMP availability test, indicator type, test. If we select it and run it, naturally you won't see any data because we just added the device and it hasn't had a chance to poll, but you can see that we have correctly gone ahead, configured our custom calculation, and that it has the indicator type name, test, and the object that we created, total SNMP availability test, and that it is available underneath that specific device. You'll notice that again, it is located underneath that device. We selected which devices it's polling against. So just because it's located underneath that device does not mean that it is strictly pulling data off that device. It is once again just where it's located. I thank you for watching this SevOne training video. Good luck with your custom calculations and enjoy using SevOne.